talk a little hockey here. The Vancouver Canucks, oh so close to officially clinching top spot in the Pacific Division, just 1 point away from doing so. And that's a large part thanks to a big 3-1 win over the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday night. So let's talk about, the future here as we're sitting here less than a week away from the NHL playoffs getting underway. Joined on the line right now by the voice of the Vancouver Canucks on Sportsnet 650, the play-by-play man on Radio NL as well. It is Brendan Batchelor. Batch, good morning. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Not too shabby. I appreciate you taking some time to join me here. And yeah, maybe just go back to Saturday night. I mean, obviously a massive win. No Connor McDavid in the lineup, but hey, a win's a win, and they'll take the 2 points, won't they?
Yeah, no Thatcher Demko in the Vancouver lineup either, so I thought Casey DeSmith was really the story of the game on Saturday. After a few rough outings, he'd lost his last 4 games in a row prior to Saturday. Put forth a good performance, especially early in the first period when the Oilers pressured, and then the Canucks got the opening goal in the last minute of the first period and were the better team beyond that, I thought. So now they're in the driver's seat. They just need to earn 1 more point from their final 2 games or have the Oilers drop 1 point from their final 3 games to clinch the Pacific Division. And it looks most likely at this point anyway like they're headed for a first-round meeting with the Nashville Predators, although that's not guaranteed either.
Yeah, and I mean, it's crazy to think about where we sit here right now with like 2 to 3 games left. I mean, the Flyers only have 1 game left here, and yet we have so much undecided when it comes to the postseason. I mean, you got 2 undecided spots in the East and out West. Sure, we know all the 8 teams that are there, but outside of Colorado and Winnipeg, I mean, all these matchups are really up in the air right now. Can you think of a season where we've had this much to decide with so little time remaining?
Nothing off the top of my head, although let's be honest, with the way the Canucks have been lately, I haven't been as focused on the playoff race because they haven't been in it. But, yeah, I mean, just from a Vancouver perspective, right now they could play Nashville or Vegas or LA in the first round, depending on how things shake down over the final few games. And then, yeah, the East has been absolutely wild with, teams trading that last playoff spot day in and day out, and it looks like it's going to come down to the Washington Capitals and the Detroit Red Wings at the moment. It kind of feels like the Islanders have separated themselves a little bit from the rest of that pack and are most likely to lock up third in the Metropolitan Division, but they're not mathematically in, and they've got 2 games left, so anything could still happen. So it's going to be fascinating to see, and it'll be interesting to follow who ends up getting in and who falls short. And, that part of it reminds me of last season where I think the Penguins controlled their own destiny, but lost a game late in the season to the lowly Chicago Blackhawks, and that allowed Florida to sneak in the back door. And then we know what the Panthers did. They went all the way to the Stanley Cup final. So really an example of all you've got to do is get in, and then you never know what can happen beyond that.
Absolutely. But let's get back to the Canucks here. So they have 2 games remaining. They got the Flames, they got the Jets. Flames tomorrow, Jets on Thursday. What are you looking for out of these games? Because we already talked about it. They basically have top spot in the Pacific locked up. So there's not a ton to play for. Yes, you still need that point, but they'll get it. I have no doubt they're going to finish first in the Pacific Division. So what are you looking for here? Is it about health? Do we just need to see if Thatcher Demko is able to play? Is he going to get in one of these 2 games? Like, what are you looking for from an analysis point of view over these next couple of games?
Yeah, Demko getting back is probably the biggest key. For one, hopefully 2 games. He talked about how the target had always been for him to return for the Calgary game, so you hope he could get in for that, and then maybe get 1 more in Winnipeg too. I guess that will depend on how fast the Canucks turnaround is going to be in terms of when they might start the playoffs, because they finished the regular season on Thursday, and the playoffs are supposed to start on Saturday. Now, whether Vancouver would play on Saturday, 48 hours after concluding the regular season, I'm kind of skeptical about that, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, get Demko a couple of games, see how he performs. And then I would kind of imagine that the game tomorrow night against Calgary is kind of your final dress rehearsal if you can win or get a point and lock up the division. Because in the event that, as I said, there is a tighter turnaround or you need to rest some guys that are banged up, that's where I'd be looking at the Winnipeg game to say, okay, you can leave some guys at home. You don't have to make them make the trip to Winnipeg and back right before the playoffs. And if you've already locked up the division at that point, then maybe you sit out a few of your top guys who have, been battling through some things here over the last few weeks. So really it comes down to the Calgary game in terms of the overall team performance, because that's the game that I expect to be reflective of the lineup that we'll see come game one of the playoffs. And if they're able to win or get that point, or they're able to lock up the division one way or another before they go to Winnipeg on Thursday, then it wouldn't surprise me if that game against the Jets has some guys sitting out and resting.
Is there any roster spot that might be up for grabs here? Like, is there anyone that you can think of that's maybe playing for a spot on day one of the playoffs, or do you think things are pretty locked up in terms of what we're going to see tomorrow night?
I think there's always opportunity on the fourth line, and we saw Vasily Podkolzin get scratched for a couple of games and then come back in on Saturday on that fourth line with Teddy Bluger and Sam Lafferty. So, Di Giuseppe's been in there, Podkolzin's been in there, so there are opportunities for some of those guys. Niels Oman's been in and out of the lineup too. So I think those are spots where even in the playoffs we could see guys rotated in and out of those positions down the lineup based on injuries or on performance and whether the team wins the game or not. And then on the back end, it's going to be really interesting to see how they manage it, because Noah Juulsen's been so great for them all season long and such a key part of the penalty kill, but he's been a healthy scratch for quite a while here now that the blue line's fully healthy, and you've got Zadorov and Cole and Soucy and Myers and Hughes and Hronek all available. So that doesn't seem like it's as likely to change, although I think Rick Tocchet has experimented a little bit with going 11 forwards and 7 defensemen, and maybe he might do that in a playoff game if he wants to get Juulsen in there to help the penalty kill or provide a physical presence or whatever else it might be. So, I think there's always opportunities for these guys, but beyond like the fourth line left winger and potentially putting a 7th defenseman in the lineup, assuming nobody gets hurt, I think this is pretty close to the lineup that we're going to see for game one.
All right. Well, final question here for you, Batch, while I have you. If you were the Vancouver Canucks and you got to choose your first round opponent, who do you think they match up best against? I mean, I think Nashville is probably the team I would look at, and if I had to choose, I would probably take them as my first round opponent because, going up against the defending champ Golden Knights, that seems like a tall task. LA is one of those teams that can just absolutely lock everything down, and the Canucks have been struggling to score goals lately. They can keep them out, but scoring, you kind of need those if you want to win games. If you were in their shoes and you got to pick exactly who you wanted to play, who would you take?
Yeah, it's got to be the Predators. I mean, they've had a great second half here, but at the same time, the Canucks swept them in the season series, although all 3 games were played earlier in the year. So it's not the exact same team that you beat, so handily early in the year. But that said, they went on their really long point streak. They had a great run, and now they've come back down to earth. They're only 1 game over 500 in the last 10 here, and they've got 1 game left in the season. So that would be the team I'd look at, just based on the fact the Canucks have matched up against them well, whereas they've had trouble with the Kings. And the Golden Knights, they've had trouble with at times as well. And as you mentioned, Vegas is the defending Stanley Cup champions. And they've got Tomas Hertl back in their lineup right now. And it looks like they could be getting Mark Stone back in their lineup in the coming days as he has returned to practice as well with his miracle recovery yet again late in the regular season. So, by process of elimination, and it's not, anything against the Predators, I think they still could give Vancouver a very hard series. And with UC Saros in net, you've got an elite goaltender that can steal games, but when you sort of line it up against the other 2 opponents, the Predators are the option that is most preferable, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and it'd be really nice to figure out, what the mid-April healing powers that Vegas seems to have, because it seems to work out that way for them every single season. We'll leave it there, Batch. Always appreciate the time. Thanks so much for this, and we'll listen for you tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. That's play-by-play voice of the Vancouver Canucks on Sportsnet 650 and, of course, Radio NL, Brendan Batchelor. He'll be on here tomorrow as the Canucks face off with the Calgary Flames, their second to last game of the regular season.